So now we have data in our database. Congratulations. I'm sure you haven't in your databases yet, but hopefully if you came to this point and you're sort of understanding, that is great. But I've also taught this class many times, and I also realized that usually sometimes people are confused at this point, trying to figure out exactly what did I just do and how did I just do this and how is this working? And so with that said, let's review a little bit and make sure we understand what we've accomplished. So with that said, what we did accomplish, let's go back and look at our database design checklist. Okay, we started this whole course with giving a problem and then trying to understand the problem, right? We then basically collected some information. In this case, I gave you the data that you needed requirements-wise. You disseminated that information and determined the entities for our particular database by identifying the nouns and then going through a set of rules to ensure that we ended up with a true set of entities for our database. Okay, so we eliminated synonyms, we got rid of things that don't belong in regards to stuff we'll never store data on, we got rid of output vehicles and so on, correct? We formed our relationships and based upon the entities that were left, all right, because we're building a relational database. We're not quite there yet on how we built that physically, but that's what we did logically, meaning that's how we did in our design. We identified the attributes by basically diving into the requirements a little bit more and making sure we understand what it is we want to store for our particular entities, okay? We identified the data types for those attributes, okay? Meaning what are they? Because we now realize that computers need to know the type of data it's storing. It just needs to know it, be able to determine how much space to hold and how to handle the data once we're doing calculations and so on. Finally, we start identifying what the primary key was, though it may be a little confusing right now on why we're doing this. Trust me, give me about another 2 to 3 weeks and you'll understand it completely, okay? So right now, just put a primary key in there and make sure it's unique. Then we're in week 4, yay us, where we sit back and we say we're going to make everything, all this design, physical. That's why we're going to build a database. We're going to make all the entities tables. We're going to make all the attributes columns. We're going to insert into the tables, okay, and test the database. And we're going to refine design if needed based upon the testing. That's the good news. You can always, you're still in the beginning of this. None of this is, production, meaning people aren't using it yet. So if you find things wrong with your design, you can go modify it. That's all good. The one piece we need to really talk about, though, is testing our database and also a couple little additives we can do to our database that's nice to learn right now. All right? So that's where we are. All right? That's how we're going through this and building our database and putting some data in it. I always want people to understand these insert commands are not usually, they're never, matter of fact, well, we'll say not usually, in this script. In the real world, a DBMA will determine what the database needs to be, and that he or she will write the scripts to actually create the tables just like we did here. This is ran one time. It's not over and over and over again, unless, of course, it needs to be modified or tweaked around. If based upon designing and understanding there, I might need to add a few more things. But once your database is set, it's set. Once your database is set it for people to start using, it's set, and you're not going to rerun the script over and over again. These inserts, though they could be used right now in this script, it wouldn't be like this. The only thing we would insert is maybe some predefined data that's needed to help us out in our programming. Hard to describe right now, so you're going to have to be a little bit patient, but if you can remember this statement I just said there, by the time you get done with programming 2, you'll know exactly what I mean. And you may know exactly what I mean a little bit later on in this course. Okay, we're basically just testing it. These type of inserts, inserting students and so on, would really be done in the applications. And the command, this insert command, would actually be built into your actual programming code. I just want you all to understand that, okay? For the sake of this course, we're not dealing with programming codes, so for us to populate our database, we would have to do it as part of this script. And because what we want to do is populate this database and then test it. And then we're going to learn more and more about SQL by using this data. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's where you are right now. And if you're comfortable up to this point of getting this information, this data in, good for you. You've done a great job. The next thing they do is we kind of want to test to make sure the data is actually good. We want to get information out. So I'm excited to start showing you a very important concept when it comes to SQL, the select statements. These are the things that you're going to write about 90% of your time throughout your career. This is basically getting information out, okay? So let's go back to right here. Let's go back and look at select, okay? Probably the most important command, oops, I missed it, sorry. There it is. One of the most important commands there is in SQL. The select statement is used to select data from the database. I like saying selecting information from the database. Data is what's stored, information is what is used, based upon that, meaning this is what we're going to get out, okay? Right now it's going to look the same. Later on, not so much, but right now it's going to look identical. So I like saying it's going to get it out of the database. The data returned is stored in a result table, okay, or a result set. So I'm going to show you that here in a second, what a result set is. You're going to become very familiar with that throughout this course and also in your programming world. In programming world, we get the result set and loop through it and actually process it. Here, what we're going to do is see the result set actually when we execute the command in SQL Server, okay? It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy. I can't say it's pretty easy. It can start very easily, but these things can get very complicated based upon what we're doing. And you're going to be surprised of what you're going to be capable of doing when it comes to a select statement as this course progresses. But right now, we'll start simple. And a select statements like this. You have select, okay? And then you tell it the columns that you want to see, and then you're going to tell it the table you want it from. That's not that hard, right? So let's get an example. I'm going to go over to ours and do this. Matter of fact, here's a great way of doing this. Sit there, you take this over, do a cut and paste over to your actual script. Now you're going to get some red lines because it doesn't know what column 1 and column 2 means. So in this case here, what I normally do, let's go ahead and get some information now from the students. So if I'm going to type in the T students table, has to be exact. See, T students, look at IntelliSense even finds it for us. You can click on that and it'll be good to go. I want to pull out some columns. So what I'm going to do, let's start really easy. I want to pull out all columns. So I want all the content for all the columns that's in the T students table. All I need to do is put an asterisk right there. Notice that the red goes away. Remember, try to finish everything you're doing before you worry about the red squiggly lines in anything you do when it comes to programming or databases. And then I'll go ahead, I don't need this actual colon here. Then I'll go ahead and I'm going to run this. Now, I can run it a couple different ways. I can go up to the top and start from the very beginning. And as you see, the result set. This is the result set. That select statement actually returned every column and every piece of data, okay? In this case, I call it information from the database based upon those inserts. What do you think? Whoopee? Let me show you something else. Now that we have the database set up and the data is already inserted, if I just want to run this thing by itself without having to rerun the entire script again, I can highlight it and execute it again. Okay, so you'll see me doing that. And you can do the same thing. Just make sure if you change the data or you change the inserts that you run the whole script again from the very beginning. Meaning if I go up here and I want to fix maybe, I don't know, what do I want to do? Maybe I want to make these OHs, capital OH like this. Well, this data does not get inserted until you rerun the entire script once again. Again, I'm going to do a Control R to get rid of this. And I go through it, and now you'll see that it actually has that in there. It looks like I missed Jose's though. I'll go back and fix that. Why not? There it is. I would hate to not be consistent. Okay, and so if I wanted to fix the data up that way, I could and rerun the whole thing. So, but remember, if you update the data like this on the, you got to rerun it again, right? You got to get that data into the database. Make sense? So there you go. You just ran your very first select statement. Now, once again, select statements can get a little bit deeper and it can do a lot of things. What if we don't want every column back? We just want the first name and the last name. Well, all I need to do, I'm going to cut and paste, okay, because I hate typing, is I would sit back and I would start typing out the name of that. So see first name right here. There's first name, column, STR is how I prefaced it, last name. One of the things I probably have not talked about in this case, we do use Hungarian notation for the naming of our columns, okay? Even though we didn't have it logically, we should do that physically, name our columns accordingly with Hungarian notation. All right, so in this case here, watch what happens. I'm just gonna run this by itself because the data is already, this has already been executed and data is already inserted in my database. And then I just pulls back the first column and the second column. What do you think? Okay. So if I just want to pull out specific column information, that's how I do it. I specify it and I separate it by a comma. So if I wanted to put address in there, I can start typing that. And now when I run this, I get first name, last name, and address. All right. Very rarely does a person need to see outside of a programmer maybe and a database the actual primary key. So usually you're giving them information that's pertinent to what they need. Okay. Remember, these queries are information to your users. That's what they want. They might come to you and say, hey, can you write a query against this database that give me all the students that we have in there and give me their address? This is what you would write. And all of a sudden that's information to them. Make sense a little bit? Hopefully, okay. Let's just say somebody comes to us and says, you know what, I like to have everybody in the database, but I only want you to show me students who are from Cincinnati. How would I do such a thing? You say, that sounds fun. Well, we already got the select clause, we already got the from clause. The other thing we need to add is the where clause, and that's sitting right here. The where clause is used to filter records, okay? And so I want to introduce this now. We'll play around with this a lot. So it's actually filtering records based upon a condition. So a nice example here, if I can find it, where go get all the columns from customers where country equals Mexico. So if I have a database that they're from Germany, Mexico, UK, and Sweden, in this way, it's only going to pull back the two that are from Mexico. So if your boss came to you and say, hey, go give me all the customers from Mexico, this is how you would write this. Okay, let's go down here. And we're going to do it this way. But we want to get all our students from Cincinnati. You would say where. Notice that I capitalize each one of those commands. Don't have to, but it just makes it nice. It stands out, makes it easy to read. And we're going to say we're STR city, right? There it is right there, equals single quote Cincinnati. Okay? Now, this result set, pulling back everybody, you would see is this right here, right? So this result set is only going to pull back one row, and that's where James Jones lives. And if we go up here, we can see that James Jones is from Cincinnati, and they were the only one from Cincinnati. Does that make sense? That's information. When somebody comes to you and says, just show me people from Cincinnati, I want to do something for them or whatever. That's how you actually do it. Okay? So that is the very beginnings of the select statement. This is the first of, hundreds of thousands of select statements you will end up writing. Okay? Fairly simple. Yep, there's a lot to learn, tons to learn how to make these more sophisticated and literally drill down into more and more information based upon how our database works. This is a nice start, and I want you to play around with them.